Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then, you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I feel like I've been having a lot more connection with my listeners through the Q&As and polls. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
Hi, I'm Father Daniel Duplantis, a Catholic priest, martial artist, and host of the Karate Priest podcast. Have you ever wondered what the church teaches about different topics? Are you a martial arts enthusiast or just someone who wants to learn more about martial arts? I'd like to invite you to join me and many guests on my podcast as we cover topics of faith, everyday living, and martial arts on the Karate Priest podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to A Catholic's Perspective, the podcast all about being a young Catholic surviving in a secular world. Today, we have a wonderful guest with us. She is a friend of mine, and we are going to be talking about vocations. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, Amber. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I'm so excited.
Thank you for being on. It's going to be such a good thing. Now, you usually are mostly active on Instagram, right? You go live between like weekdays at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern time, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you do usually like the chaplet and rosary and stuff like that. So if you guys are on Instagram, I think you also actually have a website, don't you?
Yep. sweetcatholic.com.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you guys are interested in learning more about the Rosary and the Divine Mercy Chaplet, or you want somebody to pray with, Katie goes live weekdays at 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So thank you so much for coming on and doing this with us. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Awesome. Yeah. So my name's Katie. Like Amber said, I am a stay-at-home mom. I'm homeschooling our 3 daughters right now. My husband is in the Army, so it can get a little crazy around certain times of the year like now. And but just navigating marriage, motherhood, and homeschooling definitely has my plate full. The Instagram ministry is another side thing that I'm trying to manage as best as I can. And again, this is where discernment comes in, because a lot of people think or have mentioned or talked to me in the past about, oh, now that you're like married and you have kids, that's it, like your discernment is finished. No, it's not. We are still discerning our vocations every single day of our lives. We just want to fulfill what God has in plan for us to our best abilities. So
yeah, no, it's so true. And I love that you bring that up about discernment, because we're talking about like our discernment and our vocations and God's will for us. And there's like 3 levels of vocation that I actually wasn't too aware of until I started doing research for this. And the first one is the universal vocation, to know, love, and serve God, which applies to everybody. We all have that vocation. The second one is the primary vocation, which is what we're talking about today, mainly, which is about single life, marriage, or religious life. And then the last one is secondary vocation, which is like what you're talking about, where it's like after you have your main vocation, you then use your gifts and talents to serve God while living in your primary and universal vocations. So that's pretty cool. I mean, to know that like you don't just stop discerning, there's still so much more to be had, you know? And I think that's important, because once people, especially girls, I've noticed, get married or they find their vocation in religious life or something, they suddenly are like, well, this is it. And I'm just like, no, there's so much more.
right. It's just absolutely like how you broke it down. I love that. And it's ultimately like the goal is heaven, sainthood, all the above. You know, you're just striving to really get to be with God in heaven. Like you said, our main vocation is to know, love, and serve God in this world so we can be happy with him in the next. So these things that are just like walking up the ladder, marriage, having kids, raising those kids, doing the ministry, they're just like more rungs on the ladder that are climbing closer and closer to heaven.
Exactly. And I think it's so cool because there are some people out there who will say like, oh, well, marriage is lesser of a vocation than like religious life. But I mean, so many people forget that Mary and Saint Joseph were parents, and I'm like,
Yep.
it's a wonderful vocation. And so whenever somebody tells me that, I'm always like, well, Our Lady and Saint Joseph were parents. So what you saying?
Yeah.
But like I said, it's just we're discussing like the vocations of single life, marriage, and religious. You are the mother of three beautiful girls.
Oh, thanks.
How they're so sweet. I love seeing them all the time. They just say hi and they're just so sweet. How did you decide that, marriage was your vocation? How did you discern that?
This is tricky. I had to have a lot of one-on-one time with God and prayer, adoration. Praying the rosary was definitely a big one there. I want to say I remember when I was a little girl, probably like 12, 13, I was pretty set on becoming a nun because just seeing how things were going in like my own household, I was like, motherhood is not for me. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think I could ever. But at that age, you're just so young and unexperienced. Like, you just don't know how you would live in that type of apostolate or vocation. So of course, as a child, you're looking at it through those lenses, and that seemed like the easy way out to me. Of course, like childbirth seemed really scary, so that was another reason why I was like not interested.
Right.
And I was also really I just really loved my prayer life. So I was like, well, if I'm a nun, then I'll be able to pray as much as I want, whenever I want, and it'll just be awesome. So that was how I felt when I was younger. And then as I turned like 14, 15, I took a babysitting course and I became like certified in Montessori teaching. And I just really grew to love children. I was a nanny. It was something that I really loved. And then my passion was like, I want to be a teacher. I want to have my own preschool. I want to have my own school, Montessori. Those are my big dreams. And motherhood was still there, but I didn't know how that was going to happen because I didn't have like any prospects really in my future. Um, Not until after college then did I really feel called to become a wife and a mom. And I really did have to leave that in God's hands because Adam and we met in college. If you're not, I don't know if you're familiar with our story, but we met in college. He was my first ever boyfriend. And then we ended up breaking up. He left the school to join the military,
Mm.
and I finished out my college there. I graduated. I came back to New York, and I was actually in another relationship that was not very good for 2 years. He was in a not very good relationship for 2 years also. He broke his relationship off, and then I ended up breaking off my relationship, and then God just had our paths meet up again, and the rest is history.
No,
I
that's
really
awesome.
do feel like the rosary and the adoration, because I was really just focusing on my own spiritual relationship with God when everything just kind of fell into place. I wasn't thinking about this is the guy I need to be with because I was with him for 2 years. And even though it was like a very controlling relationship, like it's okay, like he'll change or this or that, the other thing. I just kind of was like, I'm going to focus on me and God. And I just let it be.
And I think that's beautiful because in reality, I think everything falls into place when we put God first, right? So when we start putting God first, He will provide us with what we need, whether that's a spouse or a vocational direction or something of that nature. But when we start putting God on the back burner and we start trying to decide things for ourselves, that's when we start getting into a little bit of trouble. Did you ever like go to a convent or anything to like discern at all? Or was it just kind of you as a child were just interested in it?
Definitely me as a child. And then when I was in college, I was a sacred theology major. So we did have to go to convents and monasteries for the men. And we would just we would tour them. We toured EWTN. That was awesome. I love that. And then we also went to different rites of the Mass. So we went to Byzantine, we went to Ukrainian. Well, Ukrainian is Byzantine, but we went to TLM. We went to a bunch. So just being a sacred theology major really did open up my mind to like, wow, look at all these options that we have. We could be married, we could be a nun, there's all these different orders of sisters. But I think it's when it solidified it for me. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm feeling called here to be a nun.
Right. And I think there's definitely that, that pull when you go to those things to be like, okay, well, maybe this isn't the congregation or not congregation, but religious order for me,
Mhm.
but I still want this. And I know
Right.
when I stayed with the Dominican sisters, I just had such a respect and love for what they do and how joyful they are. Dominican sisters are just fantastic. I
Mhm.
was deciding between them and Franciscans because I really like being barefoot. That was the only reason. But then I went and I was like, this seems like the impossible vocation. This
Mhm.
seems so hard that I would rather literally just die than do this. And it's interesting because I talked to one of the women, one of the sisters there, Sister Cherubel, and she told me, she was like, look, if this seems like the impossible vocation, then it's not yours. Because for her, the impossible vocation was marriage. To her,
Wow.
being doing that was more difficult than becoming a celibate nun,
Mhm.
or sister. And so it's interesting how God puts these things on our hearts, because if I felt drawn to it, I would have
Mhm.
been like, well, maybe this isn't like the religious order for me, but I'll find somewhere else.
Yep.
But instantly it was just like a nope, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Though I would still love to, go to, different convents and things and just for retreats and things of that nature. But,
Yeah.
it really takes a special soul to become a sister and a nun and a monk or a priest or a brother. It's definitely not for everybody.
Mhm.
And I know that
Yeah.
the discernment, of your vocations can be difficult, especially if we're pulled towards one vocation or another vocation. What would you think is a good way to remedy this?
Um, so from feeling like torn between two vocations,
Yeah.
um, I think exactly as you were saying, like if you have a calling on your heart, it's there for a reason. I really do believe that God puts these things on our hearts from the very beginning, and it just takes time and prayer before they grow into like our full vocation. Um, so it could be possible that you might be called to be a sister or a nun and or be married, but you're not sure how to discern that yet. I think what Amber suggested was a really good idea. Like, go put yourself into into a Carmelite sisterhood, maybe, or
Right.
any type of convent or monastery if you're a man and you're wondering what your vocation might be, and try to see if you can attend a retreat there, maybe a silent retreat, and just really discern, have that time with you and God to see if that's something that would be pulling you even closer to him, or maybe you're seeing that you would be interested in becoming a husband or a wife. But then also, I think along with that would be laying it down all at the foot of the cross, and actually not just saying that, but making that act every single day, and just saying, Lord, whatever you would will of me, I'm here to do your will, and to pray the trustful novena to divine providence. That's a huge one. I was praying that on a repeat, I think, for years.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I need to get better at like when a difficult time pops up where I'm unsure about something to just like drop everything and pray, because I feel like so many times, especially me, because like I'm a control freak in a sense, I always feel like, okay, how do I fix this? But then necessarily something might not just need to be fixed. God just might be trying to show us something. And I think a lot of people view issues and these problems that pop up as being discouraging and just like a wall in the way that they're trying to go. But in reality, maybe God's trying to keep you from something that's not good for you. Or maybe he's trying to point you in a different direction, because I mean, honestly, when God shuts a door, he'll open a window too.
Mhm.
So you just have to kind of be agile and crawl through it. But I think a lot of the times people get wrapped up in this whole like, this rush to figure out what their vocation is, especially like people in college. I mean, I'm not sure if you experienced that, but I know I did, where I was just like, what am I meant to do?
Yep.
Because when you're in college, that's like when you find your spouse, or when you're supposed to, at least, and that's when you're supposed to really know what you want to do in your career, what you want to do in school, what you want to do for parenting.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's almost this rush to figure out what your vocation is.
Mhm. Yeah, it starts and it like never stops, because I did feel the same way in college. I was seeing friends in their senior year were already engaged, and I wasn't sure what was going to happen with me in that. other person that I was with at the time. And I just kind of was thinking, well, this is it. Like, it's going to have to be him then, because once I graduate and come back to where I'm living now, I was like, I don't think I'm going to, find anyone. And then it doesn't stop. Like, even now, I still look at friends and I'm like, oh my gosh, they have so many more children than I do. Like, what? And it shouldn't be like that. It's like, thank you, God, for the children that we have. If you will us to have more, then we'll have more. A lot of the times people are like, oh, are you going to keep trying until you have a boy? And it's like, you know what? God gave us 3 beautiful girls, and I'm fine with that. If we have a son, then awesome too, But I do think that the world is very rushed. It is very like, I got to do this, I got to do that. I have to get it done by this time. And a lot of it should be focused more around like, how can I have my day revolve around my prayer, which is, Lord, whatever you would like me to do, just present it to me. And I really like what you said about just letting God take care of it. I don't know if you've read the Diary of Saint Faustina.
Not fully, but I've read excerpts. So
Okay. I am that's my goal this year. I just started reading it. I'm getting through it, but she is such an inspiration. There was one excerpt in her diary that she had a plan. She was going to go out with another sister and they were going to go on a boat ride to go visit another religious area. And like, Jesus came to her and he was like, I don't want you to go there because it's not good for your soul. And she was like, well, we already had this plan, so I'm not going to cancel it. She's like, if you don't want us to go, then you have to figure it out.
yeah.
And literally, like, the next day she goes to mass and it's like nice and sunny out. And she's like, fine, I guess I'm still going, because he didn't figure it out. And then during the mass, literally like a thunderstorm broke out and the head nun was like, no one's going on this trip. It's dangerous. It's raining. And so she
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
fine, I guess Jesus didn't want me to go. So I'm like, that's literally how we should approach everything in our life. If you don't want me to do this, then take care of it and I won't do it. Like,
Right. No, and it's so true due to the fact that it's like so many people try to take control onto themselves. But if you trust God and you're like, God, take this from me, or you invoke his authority, and stuff, he will listen. Well, not listen, but like he will provide, so to speak.
I have to say it's quite relieving to know that I don't have to handle everything and control everything, because knowing that it's already taken care of is just like a huge weight lifted off.
Mhm.
What did my spiritual director said to me the other day? He was like, you have the yoke of Jesus. His yoke is easy and his burden is light. He's like, just remember that when you're going through life, his yoke is easy and his burden is light. You don't want to be the one in control, because that burden is heavy and
Yeah.
it just brings you down.
No,
And
that's
it's like,
beautiful. I love that. I also
yeah.
love what you mentioned about like the whole competition thing, people constantly like comparing themselves. Now, I'm not a mom yet, but hopefully one day, but I mean, it's one of those things where I notice that I compare myself to Catholic content creators all the time, because I'm like, oh, should I be posting more of that? Should I be doing more of this? And it's one of those unfortunate, things we can fall into. But like you said, it doesn't really stop when you get into motherhood. Like you'll start comparing yourself to other people, your friends, your family. And I feel like that's kind of the downfall of being humans, is we want things we don't have because the grass looks greener on the other side. But in reality, God's giving you the specific things you need in this moment of your life because it's good for your soul, right? Otherwise he wouldn't, because all things are done through Christ, and things done through Christ strengthens us. So
Absolutely.
even if we feel like something might be too much, God doesn't, well, God will give us more than we can handle because he knows that it means we'll get stronger, but he doesn't give us an abundance of things that we can't handle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I get that. It's like you're saying, he isn't going to give us something that is just like going to totally weigh us down. He's going to give us what's appropriate for us. And it might seem like, wow, this is too much. But once you're working through it and getting past it, you're going to be like, wow, that was actually very beneficial for me. Even though at
Exactly.
first I was like, there's no way.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think that can be the hardest thing about like discerning your vocation, because each vocation is so different and each person is so different. And so God will give us different trials and different, joys and sufferings to help us as individual people. My suffering looks different from your suffering, and my vocation looks different from your vocation, even though it might be the exact same, like marriage. but marriage looks different to everyone, and each vocation is different. And in single life, which is usually consecrated single life,
Yep.
you like consecrate yourself to God and then marry God. Like that's what you do. And usually they live in like this community with people who are also consecrated virgins. And then marriage is obviously the sacrament, and it kind of looks different for everybody. But it's like it's a man and a woman becoming one flesh, and it's beautiful, and you're open to children and things. And then religious life, that looks different for everyone too, due to the fact that there's so many convents and seminaries, like we were talking about before, and they're all different in how they live out their vocation. But there's, like, off the top of my head, there's Dominicans, Carmelites, Benedictines, Franciscans, there's monks. There's so many. And so there's a lot. So if somebody feels called to the religious life, whether you're male or female, you have plenty of options.
Yeah.
But it's like, what do you think are like some struggles though that we face in each vocation a little bit?
It's always going to come down to, is this what God wants me to do or not? Is it me or is it God? That's a big one for myself. And I have to say, the Instagram ministry was a huge question mark for me. In 2019, I just wasn't sure. It wasn't a ministry at that point. It was just a mom blogger page. So it was kind of just like, this is what I made today with my kids. This is, what mom bloggers typically do. Like, here's a life hack, here's this or that project, or someone sponsored me with this item, so I'm going to share that. So that's what the page was. That's why it was a huge question mark, because it had nothing to do with Catholicism. And it was just like, what does this have to do with my life, and how is it helping people? Because I really didn't feel like it was doing that. So to me, it was just a huge question mark. And it was also just ineffective use of time. So I actually shut down the page and I reopened it up 9 or 10 months later, because I did feel in my discernments that God wanted me to use that page for Catholicism specifically. So I switched everything over, and here we have like this beautiful prayer-filled community that's just thriving. And now I feel like it does serve people the way that I wanted, or that the way that God intended to. Like, I consecrated the page to Jesus through Mary, and I always pray over posts before I post them. If I feel in my heart like, oh, you should share this prayer today, then I'll share it. And, if I get a lot of people saying, I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety, then I'll search for a prayer for anxiety and share that day. Or so I just feel like God, like, I'm trying my best to really just let God use the page for the way it's supposed to be. And I noticed a lot of people, so I've been getting hacked a lot. So I always say to my community, if something were to happen, then that's just God being like, this is over, it's done, and it doesn't matter. And they're like, oh no, it can't be that. I was like, you can move forward, you can pray the rosary, you can pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet. It's God that you really need, not me. Like, I really just need to get that message out there, because the fact that the page has grown to where it is today, it's just mind-blowing. And when I was looking at it originally as a mom blogger, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the number I'm at. I have this many followers. I was always worried about the followers. I was always worried about the likes. And now it's just like, I don't care. Like, it's sad that I'm like, oh, my photo didn't get that many likes. So I really like that prayer to Saint Joseph and nobody really liked it, but I don't care. I'm like, it's whatever. If God wanted people to like that, then I think he would have pushed it out for more people to see. And
Right.
so, like I said, I think the biggest thing is it for me or is it for God?
Right.
That's really what helps in deciding.
And I think that's beautiful too, because I think people need to do that with their own interior ministry, whether that's marriage or something, praying over, projects with their kids, and consulting God when they come up with an issue with their children. Or if you are on social media, praying about that post before you post it. And that's something that I've definitely tried, putting more into my ministry as well, is because God is the whole reason this is happening. Without him, we would be nothing. And so trying to give glory back to God through a ministry can be difficult when you have all these people congratulating you and giving you all this, confidence. And it can, if you're not careful about checking it, especially for me, it can turn into pride and be like, yeah, I'm just so great, I guess.
Mm.
So it can be difficult for
Yeah.
sure.
This is something that I'm working on right now. The Litany of Humility is a beautiful one. The Litany of Trust.
I love
I
those.
highly recommend that. And this is something that, I was discussing with my husband, and my spiritual director mentioned it. He was like, you know what, watch out for the pride, watch out for the vanity. And I'm like, always. And he's like, and I'm telling you now, like, to watch it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, got it.
Well, it
It's kind of
creeps
like, I
in.
trust him. If he tells me to like get off of my Instagram, I will, because
Mhm.
I would rather be spiritually safe than in harm's way. So,
And it can creep in like the smallest way.
mhm.
It's not even like some people think vanity or like pride can come from posting too many selfies or revealing photos or this or that. But, vanity and pride can come from a whole bunch of different areas. And I think that's why, it's so important that we are alert and we're ready for the lion that is stalking us in the grass. Because
Yeah,
as soon as we let our guard down and maybe we're like, yeah, well, I am pretty awesome. Not to say like having confidence and a good sense of pride in yourself is bad. There's a
right.
fine line, between being
Absolutely.
proud of what you've accomplished and thanking God for that and having that
Absolutely.
self-confidence. But then you kind of tiptoe the line of, oh yeah, I did all of this and this is all on me and I'm the best and I'm the greatest. And that's when
Hmm.
you start sliding down that slippery slope. And I love the litany of humility and trust. I think my boyfriend and we did the litany of trust not too long ago, just because we were both struggling with things. He's trying to get into a college for his PhD major. I'm
Yeah,
trying to get my ministry off the ground and everything. And it could just be really difficult sometimes to trust in God's plan when we can't see it.
right.
Uh, and
Hmm.
so sometimes we try to take it into our own hands, and it might go well for a little while because God's like, all right, we're going to let her go on her own for a little bit. And then when I fall on my face, he's like, all right, pick her up. Let's go. It's
Yeah, exactly.
just crazy.
Oh my gosh. Get the ambulance.
Yeah, literally, honestly, just like wee woo, wee woo.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
but it's just crazy to me how, uh, unique every vocation really is. Because again, like even though we might have a similar vocation, our secondary vocation might be completely different.
Hmm.
We have that similarity where we both run a ministry, but our
Yeah.
ministries are significantly different because we're significantly different people and our ages are different and everything like that. We're in different times of our lives. But I think so many people try to compare their vocation to other people who are in their vocation. Um, like, let's say, like, yeah, like my vocation's marriage. Let's say that. Okay. And your vocation's marriage, but you're already married and you have three beautiful girls and everything like that. Someone might be tempted to be like, oh, I'm 23. I should have like four kids already and, be done with this and that. And in reality, like, no, because you are not that person, and I
Hmm.
think we can, as women, especially, we can really get wrapped up in that and we can become, I don't want to say bitter, but we can really become, I guess, bitter towards God in our own vocation because we're like, oh, we
Hmm.
should be here. And that's just with anything. It could be grades, it could be college, it could be a sports team that you're on. Like, oh, I should be better at dribbling the ball. But, um, and it's like one of those things where I think it's really important to stay on top of that and remember that we are not like the same person.
Right. That also kind of made me think back to, call me crazy, but like the Garden of Eden, when they just wanted to know more, they wanted more
Yeah.
answers, they wanted, so they kind of took control, and that's when the fall happened. I mean, I feel like everyone in their life is in the spot where God wants them to be, whether it's in like a not really great spot or it's a good spot and they could achieve more, or it's hard to tell because everyone is so different, like you're saying. But that doesn't mean that they're not supposed to be in that spot, because I do feel like God has a plan in everything, in all circumstances. It's just really important to really ask and put yourself at the foot of the cross, literally, and just be like, what do you want out of me in this situation in my life? Why is this happening? How could I better glorify you and serve you in this situation? And or if you don't know what your calling is, then to say, what is my calling? And not try to force something to go the way that you want to, or to find all the answers for everything, because you are not God, and that's just never going to happen.
Right. And it's so true. I think we really have like that control freak kind of mindset where we always want to know what's next. We don't like surprises as human beings. We always want to know what the next step is, what the next decision should be. And in reality, like even if we make a wrong decision, God will still meet us where we're at and be like, okay, now we have to go this way because you made that decision. But he's
Exactly.
never going to be like, nope, that's it. I'm throwing in the towel. Like you're done.
No.
He's never like that.
Yeah,
He's
he's
always
really
willing
the
to.
best, the most loving, the most merciful, and I can definitely say there was a huge decision that Adam and I had to make before we had kids while he was in the military, and he was choosing whether or not to go on a very long deployment, and because I was not fully like discerned and fully committed to the will of God, and my will was for him not to go on that deployment, he decided for my sake not to go on that deployment. And now looking back on that, I was like, wow, that would have, like, where we are right now, he wouldn't be traveling as much as he is if he did go on that, because that would have been his one huge deployment. And that was before we had kids. So I would have just been doing my own thing just for a few months. And I'm like, God really did have it figured out nicely. And I decided to go the other way. And because of that, I'm taking this long, hard road right now. And, Adam was like, yeah, I didn't want to put you through that because it was a hard time for both of us. We were just newly married. And so you have to really, like, we all have those parts in our life that we look back on, but it's not regret or anything like that. It's just, I should have trusted. I should have really prayed more and just really given it to God instead of forcing it to go the way I wanted it to go out of
Right.
fear. Fear is so imminent, especially I feel like in the world now with everything that's going on with social media and the news and the world with everything. Fear is like the foothold. If that gets into your soul, it will literally tear you down to other deadly sins, dread, pride, laziness. It'll just come cascading down on you. And I think a lot of us are sensing it this year a lot. So it's really important to just keep yourself grounded in your faith, call on the Holy Spirit, call on your guardian angel. That's why they're there, to give you that strength you need to just keep that door closed. And even if it gets cracked open, you got to get your holy water and bless salt or whatever. I don't know what. Just
Right.
don't.
No, it's so true though, because I do think like what you said from your story example, I think there are so many examples like that where we look back and we're like, oh, if I had only trusted God. Again,
Yeah.
it's not regret, it's just observation. And you see it and you're just like, this should be proof that I should just trust God. And yet every single day we're just like, well, maybe this time it'll be different.
Right.
And I tend to fall into that until I'm like, wait, no. And I think that comes from like intentionally living as well. Are we
Yep.
intentionally living for Christ every day, or are we just going about the motions and just trying to reach the bare minimum of fulfilling our vocations? Because I think
Mhm.
a lot of people, there is an overwhelming sense when you're in a vocation. I'm sure motherhood can be overwhelming sometimes, yet also joyful. I'm sure consecrated single lives like that, and I definitely know priests and religious lives can be overwhelming yet joyful.
Mhm.
But there's something about living your life intentionally for God, and intentionally living out your vocation for God, and not just trying to reach the bare minimum, but going above and beyond your duties. Maybe that's not feasible every single day. Obviously, we have to take care of ourselves too. But there's
Mhm.
something to be said about living intentionally like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I will definitely plug the Reform online, Reform Wellness.
Mhm.
They're a phenomenal resource to use, especially if you're discerning your vocation. I feel like they really do help everyone just get grounded and centered in Christ first and foremost. And then they focus on all these other wellness pillars,
Yeah.
like physical, stress, nutrition. They will focus on space, which is just time with you and God. And I know I said play. So everyone should have like joy-filled moments where they're playing every single day. And there's a few other of their pillars, but they're so rounded. And once you start like going through their courses, I'm taking a second course with them right now. And it's
Oh,
just like
wonderful.
really, really good. It's really
What's it
fruitful
called
and
again?
just Reform online.
Reformed online. I'm just going to look it up later, but yeah, I'll put it in the
Yeah.
notes for people.
Yeah. So right now am in Dig to the Roots, which is the second step up. So the first one is just Reform Online, and they just teach you about the 9 pillars and, really just living out your life rooted in Christ. And it ties in with this book I'm reading right now. I'm doing a lot of healing this year. Okay. So the book I'm reading is not just the St. Faustina's Diary, which is very healing, but Be Healed by Bob Schutz, I think his name is.
Oh,
A really good book.
I've
And
heard of that.
a lot of our stuff that we have, everyone has some type of healing that they need to get through. They have some type of, like for me, I have chronic illness, I have migraines, I have back and neck pain, I have, spine problems. But that's all, like what he's going through in his book right now that I'm learning is all of that is rooted in something spiritual. It's something, there's a tree, and then there's roots to the tree, and those roots need healing before your whole person can be healed. So I had to say that is a huge part in living out your vocation as well, because if you're only like partially invested because you're not feeling very good, then it's going to be very hard to really fully commit to surrendering to God because you're not really feeling your best.
Right.
But
No, that's beautiful. I think there's something to be said about that too, because there's so many people that struggle with chronic illness and other things like infertility or certain things, that can really impact a person and can break us down almost because we feel like there's something wrong with us. But
sure,
in
right.
reality, yeah. And in a way, it's more like a way that we can lean on God. But I love that you mentioned that because I think that resource will be very helpful for a lot of people because there's so many people that struggle with chronic illness these days and pain, I was about to say tuberculosis, scoliosis. I mean, tuberculosis, I guess too, but like
Yeah.
scoliosis and arthritis and migraines and it's just heartbreaking to know that like these are all because of sin, because of the fall of Adam and Eve and stuff like that. But also to know that our reward in heaven will be great because we'll have our new bodies, without pain, without all this stuff. And so I don't get the personal level of it, but I understand the concept of it and how it can be really disheartening for so many people.
Right.
So it's beautiful that you shared that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just think it's wonderful to talk about vocations in general because there's so many people out there that are just a little bit confused on what they are. So
Sure.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and being able to talk to these things on your own level, but also like with me. I just think it's really fun conversation.
Yeah, it definitely was. We got, a lot of stuff that we discussed, and maybe I overshared, but if
Oh
I did,
no, I think it
um,
helps people.
yeah, I mean, I just feel like hopefully this serves as a helpful tool for anyone out there who just is trying to walk the straight and narrow like we all are. Really, it just doesn't end. I'm still discerning on everything every single day. It just doesn't end, and it's not going to end until we die.
Yeah, literally, because then we'll be hopefully in heaven.
Yeah, so
No,
and I mean that
exactly.
like in a joyful way. Like death is exciting, it's not something to be feared. That's what our mission is, to be united with God finally. So
We
we
should
want to
do a
live
whole
this life.
podcast on death, honestly.
This would be good. I've had a lot of people ask me about the 3 days of darkness and all that.
Yeah.
So
That
you
I
should
love.
yeah,
We should
I
do
don't
one.
do podcasts, but you should do one on that.
I feel that. Yeah, no, I know. I love the 3 days of darkness. I mean, obviously it's personal revelation, or private revelation, so you don't have to believe it, but I'm like, better to be prepared than not prepared, right?
Yeah. So now
Like,
that everyone's wondering, we should probably just share a little bit about what it is. Because they're gonna be
so
like, what are they talking about?
right. Did you want to explain it a little bit? I think you
No,
might be a
you
little
go
fresher
ahead.
on it. No? Okay. So basically, the 3 days of darkness are supposed to be basically the 3 days at the end of the world where the gates of hell is unleashed upon the world. And you're supposed to cover all your windows. You're supposed to have blessed bees, 100% pure beeswax candles, which will light when, the 3 days of darkness happens. And you cannot go outside. What you should be doing is praying for those 3 days. The rosary is really powerful. And if you go outside, basically, I believe it's you drop dead. Because the demons will try to do anything to get you to come outside. And so there's so much more, but that's like a little tidbit. So maybe I should do an entire podcast about that. That would be interesting.
I think it
Perfect
would
for
be very
Halloween.
good. Yeah, and I don't think it's anything to really be scared of, because it's really just there to reveal to the world how real hell is
True.
and how important God wants us, how important it is that we need to really get to heaven to be with God, because he's literally like, this is your last chance. Like,
He's like, come
and
on, guys.
yeah, and there will be an illumination of conscience, which I'm sure you've heard of that too, when we'll be able to see our souls as God sees them, which is extremely frightening to me. Reading St. Faustina's diary, she did say that in one of her encounters with Jesus, and I'm like, this is a really godly woman. Okay, she's like a saint, and she saw herself through God's eyes, and she was literally like terrorized because of how bad she looked in God's eye, like how like sinful, not bad, but sinful. So like
Right.
when I read it, I'm like sobbing, oh my gosh, like I would never like,
Like, what about me?
so having the illumination of conscience is a little frightening, but also to look at it like, okay, now I know what I need to do from here on out moving forward,
Exactly.
because it isn't like I'm showing you how I view you and that's it, like you're done. It's like I'm giving you another chance. I'm telling you what you need to do. I'm showing you what you need to do. So
Exactly. No, I
that's
completely agree. Yeah. I know it can be horrifying though. I mean, honestly, but I think it gives us motivation to do better,
yes,
you know?
that's what it serves as, just like, hey, be aware of it and know it
Mhm.
now. This is it.
Just a slap in the face for you.
Yeah, I think there are some people out there that when that happens, they're just literally, like you said, when you go outside, you just drop dead. Like they'll just drop dead because of how
Mortified they are.
mortifying that. Yeah.
I
So
understand. Yeah, that's just crazy, but it's so cool to think about, how rich our faith is and like how we have those explanation for things. I just think that's really
I
cool.
know, like I don't think any other faith does that, where God's like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm gonna let you know how you look to me, and
Like
all
looking
these
through God's
chances.
eyes.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
literally gives us so many chances.
Yeah. And we're just like, well, maybe next time. It's like little kids when you try to give them a 5-minute timeout and they're just like, no.
Yeah, exactly. I can earn it back.
Yeah, exactly. And God keeps trying to give us those timeouts because Our Lady appeared to us in Akita and Fatima, and we still don't listen. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. But
Yeah.
no, I love doing topics like that. That should be a whole other topic. But thank you again so much, Katie, for coming
You're
on here.
welcome.
And where can my followers find you one more time?
So I have Sweet Catholic Life on Instagram. And then if you go to sweetcatholic.com, you can check out my website there. We have a monthly newsletter that I like to push out. This month started in the middle of the week, so I will get my monthly newsletter out on Monday. And yeah, I think that's it. You can put prayer intentions in there. We will get you on the prayer line, and I pray daily every weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern. We do Divine Mercy Chaplet. Sometimes we have a novena that we're praying, and then the rosary.
Beautiful. Yeah. No, I love that so much. Sometimes I pop on and I'm like, oh my gosh, yay,
Yeah.
community.
Oh
It's
my
really
gosh.
nice
If
to
you
have it.
ever jump in and you want to pray with us, you're more than welcome to. Just
Oh,
know that.
thank you. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I definitely will sometime. That's awesome. Sometimes we do them anyways, but
Yeah.
no, that's so cool. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you coming on. And if you guys really like this conversation, make sure you go give Katie a like on her Instagram and her website. So thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome to chat with you, and I hope you enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, you too. So much. Yes. And with all of that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hopefully, it helped anyone who is discerning vocations or anything of that nature. And I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to A Catholic's Perspective with me, The Religious Hippie. Make sure to visit my official website at thereligioushippie.com, and while you're there, be sure to sign up for my newsletter to keep up to date with my latest news and offerings. You can also find me on virtually any social media site as The Religious Hippie. Thanks for listening.
A quest is a search for something. And every week, the Quest podcast will show you how we know what we know through interviews with people that have incredible stories of dedication and perseverance. I'm your host, Todd Fisher. Join me in this thought-provoking and inspiring podcast of discovery. Find us anywhere you listen to podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Selling a little or a lot? Do your thing however you cha-ching with Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/offer23.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fisher and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure and visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.